90.7 KPFK, Los Angeles.
Russia, if you're listening.
Talk show, random, political, outrageous, philosophical, analytical, passionate, hidden sunsets, roadkill cooking tips, open-minded, swordsman, bent, resolute, chocolate, bushwhacker, belt buckles, investigative, companion, fearless. Call in. Piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. It's the Cary Harrison Files.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Big show today. Don't want you to miss even a second. Later in the bottom half of the show, we're going to go to college students at the University of South Florida who are reminding us that climate change has not vanished simply because the White House has said it has. They're stuck on this planet for 80 more years, and they certainly have something to say about it. Also, we're live streaming right now on YouTube. You can simply Google Cary Harrison YouTube, and that way we can stay connected when you show up driving at your destination. Then you just switch over to the stream on your phone at Cary Harrison YouTube. Next week, we're going to be also adding in Substack, where you can also find Tom Hartman and all kinds of other people. We're going to be doing our video there, which is probably more convenient for most of you. Also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at CaryHarrison.com, CaryHarrison.com, C-A-R-Y. There you're going to get a transcript of this entire show, plus access to clips and stuff we simply, we no longer could do on the radio. And that's our newsletter at CaryHarrison.com. Well, you, me, the weary, tax-paying, democracy-clutching audience with the other. Yes, guess who I might be talking about? Elon Musk, the celestial swindler, the oligarch extraordinaire, the man who'd sell you a ticket to Mars but can't keep his own Teslas from auto-immolation. And yet, despite his cartoonish villainy, your elected representatives still shovel public money into his bottomless pit of corporate welfare like devout worshipers feeding a golden calf. You see, Musk has built an empire not just on rockets and electric cars, but on the unshakable belief that the rules simply don't apply to him. He rakes in billions, I sound like the president, right? Billions from federal contracts, then turns around and declares that the government is the enemy. Like a house guest who raids your fridge and clogs your commode and then lectures you on the virtues of self-reliance. He's not just another billionaire padding his wallet with public money. He's actively working to dismantle the institutions that made his success possible in the first place. Now, I wish I could just stop and let it all soak in for about 3 minutes, but dead air is like the Democratic Party, and we don't need any more listless, spineless, meaningless nothingness while the bulldozer rolls over 280 million of us. Pissed? You bet I'm pissed. What in the diddly frig does it take to get impotent crustaceans like Chuck Schumer, who represents the entire Democratic Party in the Senate? What does it take for him not to rubber stamp all the Zeke Heiling? Why in God's name would he work hand in hand to gut agencies, silence critics, and tilt the scales ever further in favor of a sweaty oligarch? It really is, it's an impossible situation. But a government shutdown, well, at least that will always reflect on the president first, especially when he's convinced everyone he's a superhero, that he's flawless and the most brilliant, amazing, handsome, brilliant, best president ever, even better than George Washington. Plus, he says he loves flip-flops. Who knew? No one knew. Maybe it's because America is now in such a terrific and totally beautiful golden age that winter is hereby abolished and it's going to be summer all year round. Summer all the time, folks. Thanks to rising sea levels, we're going to have so much beachfront property that flip-flops will become the national shoe of America because you'll be wearing them and dealing with them all the time while everyone is totally winning, and it's going to be so great, so great. We're continuing to flip-flop on trade policy, which I think Americans are happy about, and we're going to use the tariffs, which we will implement, but maybe not yet, but maybe 50% or maybe 25% or 200%. Or maybe even no tariffs at all. But we're going to use the tariffs. We're going to use them to take back everything that was stolen from us and so much more. In addition, as of today, the illegal and totally unconstitutional boycott of Tesla will end, and every American homeowner will be required to purchase a Tesla so they can be totally great and live the American dream. Every American must buy a Tesla as of today, which are very affordable automobiles. They come at very affordable prices, but every homeowner will be required to purchase a Tesla so that Elon can continue to be able to feed his very, very big family. And boy, he spreads his seed even more than maybe immigrants, who I totally love, by the way. Does this sound like someone you know? But Elon is making a huge sacrifice, a very huge sacrifice, because he loves our country and wants to save our country, and he's doing it all for free, for nothing, just out of the goodness of his heart, because he's a patriot, even though he wasn't born here, and he wants America to succeed. Oh, I got another one later, and the other one came from just 2 days ago. At least right now, there are several judges who do not want, who do not want to see more of this and do want America to succeed. And they've stepped in to try to stop the lunacy. We can only hope that they feel vindicated in doing their constitutional duty, and that others are going to join them to empower even more judges to do as the founding daddies had intended. Otherwise, we're dealing with a billionaire so deeply entwined with government handouts that if the spigot were ever turned off, he might actually have to compete in the free market that he claims to love. But worry not, because today, our guest isn't here to swoon over rocket launches or sing odes to innovation. No, we're joined by Sanjeev Berry, a foreign policy analyst and human rights advocate whose work includes the ACLU, Amnesty International, the NRDC, and Rainforest Action Network. You've probably seen him on news networks, so he's here now to discuss an idea so revolutionary that it has lost the timid minds of most Democrats in Congress: cutting Musk off from the chapped nipple of his government trough. Sanjeev's here to discuss the new proposal for halting federal contracts with Elon Musk companies in a national campaign to get U.S. senators to block all taxpayer funding for the oligarch. Sanjeev Berry, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Cary. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
I love setting you up like that. You're just like an all-star superhero for us.
Well, I think you're the superhero, leveraging your spotlight to help people who listen to you and watch your show figure out how to take action in this crazy, insane time that we're all in. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. Let's just jump right on into it, because this is what's on everyone's mind, Sanjeev Berry. Why do you think the Democratic Party has been so reluctant to use legislative power against Musk, despite his open hostility to democracy?
I mean, this is a huge question that has a lot of us scratching our heads. It seems quite obvious, man. Just having Elon's image on screen is giving me heart palpitations. But it's it's the problem that a lot of us are scratching our heads about. Why is Charles Schumer, why is Chuck Schumer, such a scaredy cat on this? I just saw on social media that Nancy Pelosi is asking senators to reject the Republican Trump spending plan and is essentially going over what Chuck Schumer is asking senators to do. So you're seeing even Nancy Pelosi getting frustrated with Chuck Schumer, along with the rest of the Democratic Party and all of us who are deeply concerned about the future of our country.
I remember, Sanjeev Berry, it was some years ago. It was an outrage. It was another Trump outrage or something. And Chuck Schumer looked at the cameras, pulled his half-lensed eyeglasses down to the end of his nose. If he'd had pearls, he would have clutched them and said, "I'm terribly disappointed." I mean, it was such an outrage. Disappointment doesn't even touch it. Let me describe disappointment. Disappointment is when your summer house in Nantucket has sheets on the guest bed that the maid forgot to change. That's disappointing. This stuff is orgasmically outrageous. And thank God Nancy has risen out of her corpse-like body once every 15 years to do something, because this is the inflection point, Sanjeev Berry. SpaceX valued at $350 billion, largely thanks to government contracts. How much of that valuation do you think is actual innovation, and how much is political favoritism?
I mean, with both Tesla and SpaceX, it's the sort of mystique that Elon Musk has built over the years that enables them to be valued not based on what they're actually delivering, but what people hope or imagine or fantasize that these companies will produce in the future. And so that's why we're seeing Tesla stock collapsing, even in the 24 or 48 hours after Trump decided to turn the White House into a car dealership. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is that reality's catching up, right? I mean, that's
I'm
what it
only
is. Like
laughing
I
because
in
it's
my
true.
mind, no, it's true. I mean, and I started thinking like maybe the action we all need to launch is to just bring our used cars to the White House for a trade-in, because that's the level of chintziness that this White House is going for. But the bottom line is it's not working, right? Tesla stock are continuing to go down because people don't want to buy them. And not just people in the US, but people in Europe. And it goes even further than that. I saw a headline recently that the city of Baltimore is backing away from a prior plan to buy Tesla vehicles. And that's where the rubber hits the road for all of us. In my original piece that in The Intercept, I wrote about blocking federal contracts for SpaceX and Tesla. But it turns out we can do this at the state and local level as well. If people at the local level, in city councils, at the state level, in state legislatures, at the county level, push for their governments to commit to not buying Teslas, to not buying Starlink from SpaceX, we will crush Elon Musk's wealth and we will send investors fleeing.
Sanjeev Berry, I think a lot of us have now seen, well, we've seen the picture of the White House becoming a car dealership, which it became that the day of the election. However, it really became that. Some of us have seen the famous 1938 photo of Adolf Hitler, the Fuhrer of Germany, with a Volkswagen, same thing, standing with the developer of Volkswagen, selling it as the people's car to the people of Germany from the federal MIT. Same thing, like using literally a way to sell cars to make himself rich and make his friends rich. Exactly the same thing we saw in 1938 have we now seen. If anyone doesn't think this is a gigantic grift, they really haven't been brought around. So if Elon Musk's companies lost access to federal contracts tomorrow, what do you think would happen to his empire? Would it collapse, or would he find another way to keep this grift going?
No, it would collapse. I mean, SpaceX is the world's most valuable startup, but that is because of its deep ties to the US government and the expectation that Trump will shovel billions more towards Elon Musk. But if there's a movement in the United States to push US senators to filibuster bills that enable or allow for funding for Elon Musk's companies, that movement's going to pick up steam, and that movement's going to be scary to investors in SpaceX, as well as people who are buying Tesla stock. And the good news is we don't have to start with the Senate, even though I think we would have allies there. And if we ask folks like Senator Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren to support this with enough public support, they would. You can ask your local city council member, your local county supervisor, your friendly state legislator to introduce a bill at the local county or state level saying that they will not spend any of your tax dollars on SpaceX or Tesla products. SpaceX, of course, produces Starlink, the internet platform. So there's a real opportunity here to take this to the grassroots, just as the movement to protest Tesla stores is already happening. And if we do that, I think that there's a real big shot at just crushing Elon Musk's wealth and sending a message to Jeff Bezos and all the other oligarchs that they need to back off.
If you'd like to see our handsome guests, you can watch it right now on YouTube. You can simply Google Cary Harrison YouTube and subscribe so we'll stay connected. When you show up at your driving destination, simply switch over to the stream on your phone at the Cary Harrison YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at caryharrison.com. There you're going to get a transcript of the entire show, plus access to stuff that we just can't do on the radio anymore. And that's our newsletter at caryharrison.com. We're talking to Sanjeev Berry, foreign policy analyst, human rights advocate, a man who agrees that the U.S. government shouldn't be bankrolling Elon Musk's empire, while Musk gleefully dismantles the very system keeping his fortune afloat. And we're talking about a new campaign in which democracy should serve people instead of tech oligarchs lighting cigars with government contracts. It's so like 1940s, but here we are. And let's talk a little bit about the Freedom Forward organization that you're involved with. They certainly don't think this is a great idea. I think maybe you have frozen Sanjeev. Looks like the internet has frozen you, or you have been frozen out of this broadcast. Let's give you another 5 seconds, see if you're able to come back. Sanjeev, I see you completely frozen in video. So I'm just going to continue. And when you come back and hear me, you can, there you go. Apologies. There we go. You're moving again, my friend. It's Starlink, I think you're using.
Hey, sorry about that.
I was just pointing out the freedom.
Parents.
It happens. It happens when you're using Starlink. I'm using Frontier, which still is not related. Let's talk a little bit about the Freedom Forward organization, which is the force behind removing Elon Musk's fangs from the neck of you and me, the taxpayer. They're clearly taking a risk by doing this, and hopefully politicians, Democrats, and Republicans alike, who seem terrified taking on billionaires. I'm feeling actually hopeful knowing that you're doing this. And I think a lot of us need that.
Thanks, Cary. I mean, I will say that when I see folks like Elon Musk or Trump out there doing what they're doing, my mind goes into campaign mode. I scan for vulnerabilities and then I get excited. And Elon Musk has a lot of vulnerabilities. If folks want to get involved in this campaign, all you have to do is go to .org and just take the first step of signing the petition, calling on senators to block Musk. So you've just follow up with you that you plugged into the actual campaign. It's freedomforward.org. Our mission is basically to back freedom in the world and democracy at home. You know, the U.S. government has for too long allied with dictators and repressive governments, especially in the Middle East. And here at home, our own democracy now is on fire thanks to the oligarchs and Donald Trump. And so Freedom Forward is here to help build the campaigns that take back our democracy at home and end U.S. support for dictators abroad. And so going to the website is the easiest way to get involved in this campaign. And I'm going to be posting very soon draft language that you can take to your city council, to your county board of supervisors, to your state legislature and say, please introduce this as a bill. Let's make a commitment to not buying anything from Elon Musk.
Sanjeev Berry, you've mentioned that a filibuster could be used to block funding to Musk's companies. What would it take for that to actually happen? Do you see any senators willing to take that stand? You did mention a couple, Bernie, Elizabeth Warren. Do you think a filibuster could actually work here? And the video has frozen again.
I think that would take public pressure. And as we've seen, sorry, can you hear me now?
I do.
Okay, great. As we've seen from Chuck Schumer's dance these days, he's behaving in a very cowardly fashion. So we would need other senators to step up. And I think they're more likely to do that as they hear from people across the country that we're sick of our tax dollars funding an egomaniac like Elon Musk while he sets fire to the rest of the federal government, all the parts of the federal government that help, keep us healthy, financially secure, safe, all of the services that help us as a country through our tax dollars, through our earnings. He's setting fire to all that. And I think that senators will pay more attention as we take this up and bring it to them.
Sanjeev Berry, I'm looking at a bunch of different messages coming in from Blue Sky, which is where we like to put our love. Also Twitter, Substack, different places. I'm just going to pull one out that's clearly big on people's minds. Somebody is asking that Musk has spent $250 million supporting Trump. What kind of return on investment has he gotten so far?
I think he has hoped to get billions and billions of dollars of return on investment, but he's actually losing billions. I mean, what I've read is that he's lost $100 billion in paper wealth just in a matter of the last few days or weeks. So right now, his return on investment is very negative. His hope has been to lock in more and more contracts to more and more money. And I look at Elon Musk and I see somebody who convinces himself that he is righteous, even though he's actually just greedy and manipulative. And I think that's been his goal.
If this were the Obama administration and there were even one cabinet member, or let's just say not hired non-government employee that went in with a chainsaw and started tearing apart the federal government with thousands of conflicts of interest, including the president, people would have said something. But I guess this is what it looks like, using the F word that I dare not say on the radio, where we're under a crypto authoritarian. It's not even crypto, but it is what it is. Speaking of crypto, they're even arguing that defunding Musk companies.
I think, Trump is, he's just that Trump is high.
Your audio popped out there. Try that again, if you would. Sanjeev,
I
your
apologize.
audio.
I'm not usually
It's
having
okay.
this kind of internet trouble. I apologize for that. I look at Trump as somebody who doesn't have any long-term game plan other than bringing more cash into his pockets, whether it's attempting to ethnically cleanse Gaza and turn it into a resort, or just taking as much money as he can via his crypto scams or from Elon Musk. Like, he doesn't really care about anything. Even his base, I don't think appreciates the depth to which he just doesn't care about anything, including them. And so, taking Elon Musk's money and allowing Elon Musk to do whatever the heck he wants, I don't think Trump cares. I think Trump just likes spectacle. He likes headlines. It's the only thing he knows how to do. And he has no concept of how to actually govern or build or create anything.
We're now seeing judges stand up and enforce their constitutional obligation. We have a couple of them so far. I think we've had 3 or 4 now in toto over the course of weeks. I'm hoping that other ones will feel that they've got some support at their back. Like, I'm not the only one seeing the obvious, that there are others like me, and that our Constitution is actually strong enough to withstand this. You're in the business of looking at other governments, other groups of people, other systems like this that have unfolded fully and matured. This one has not yet. I would invite you to augur your crystal ball for a second. And, what's your confidence report that we can survive this?
Well, one of the things that I've learned from my time working on international human rights is just how paper thin the wall is between democracy and totalitarianism or authoritarianism. And that paper thin wall, as much as we like to think that it's about rules and institutions, it is all of that. But fundamentally, it's about agreeing to keep democratic norms. And when you have large numbers of people who are willing to toss those out the window in the service of an authoritarian ruler, then it becomes a lot harder. The good news is that if enough of us prevent that from happening by standing in the way, and it only takes a few percentage points of a population to block authoritarianism. It only takes a handful of percentage points to shut down the system, a percentage of the population. That if enough of us do that, we can send these people back into the ideological caves from which they emerged. And that means making it clear that the billionaires who are willing to compromise and sell out free speech, sell out, our basic institutions, sell out an independent judiciary, that they have everything to lose, because they still depend on customers and citizens and voters. And when we turn our backs on them, their power collapses. So I guarantee you that Bezos, Zuckerberg, all of these folks are watching the Tesla stock collapse, are watching the mess that Elon Musk is making for himself and taking notes. And so we have to make it as big a mess as possible, and really set a goal, I think, of completely breaking Elon Musk's empire. And once we do that, and just moving in that direction, as we move in that direction, we're going to send a signal that we're willing to fight back and fight hard to protect our democracy against those who only care about their naked, self-interest and wealth.
I remember a few years ago talking to an expert on GMOs, genetically modified organisms, which is ubiquitous in our food supply here. Mexico, early on in the game, when Trump became president, decided that they would no longer carry GMO corn, that real corn from the ground using, I know, shocking, sun and water, called rain, is their national crop and no more GMOs. That was one of their first strikes back. All that to say, this guy, I think his name was Jeffrey Smith, who is really the uber expert on GMOs, said that they were able to remove high fructose corn syrup from cereal some years ago, and it only took 15% of the population. What I'm doing is supporting what you were saying, that it doesn't take that many. 15% of the population did not understand what high fructose corn syrup was, but they knew it was bad. They heard that it did something bad to you and that you should avoid it like the plague. And that is enough to really destroy the margins of a company that puts high fructose corn syrup in cornflakes. And then within a couple of months, you might remember vaguely seeing boxes of Raisin Bran with a big yellow stripe across the top that said contains no high fructose corn syrup. Now they're going to yell it because they did the right thing, but it didn't take that many people. So we have a chance here.
Yeah, and I would say that the numbers that I've heard when it comes to disrupting authoritarianism are way smaller than 15%. It's like 3-4%. If everybody who, and we're way beyond that in terms of the percentage of the population that's freaked out by what Trump is doing, with the latest being the attempted deportation of, the Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil. Like, now they're trying to take people out of the United States who want to speak their minds. So you're right? It's a small percentage of the population, and way more of us are concerned than that small percentage number. And if all of us just flex our muscle a little bit, this whole regime comes tumbling down. But we have to do it, right? We have to move beyond complaining. We have to move beyond simply, expressing anger to each other, and actually flex our muscles, ask something of the people in power who are supposed to represent us, and go beyond that and actually directly disrupt the power and wealth of those who are driving this currently horrific direction that our country's in.
And you're recommending going to the freedomforward.org, freedomforward.org.
Yeah, there's a lot of important things we can be doing right now. I think one that would be really helpful is for people to join this campaign. And then I'm going to update everybody very soon on the specific steps you can take to block city, county, and state governments, and ultimately the federal government, from giving Elon Musk a single penny of our tax dollar wealth.
Well, thank you, my friend. I'm just going to reread something. Renee, our wonderful director, if you could bring that back up again. People who are watching the stream on YouTube or Twitter or X, formerly Twitter, wherever you're watching with a chip and a signal, you can put up comments. This one says, Trump swamplanders had likely pre-planned the current U.S. stock market's free fall and had likely heavily shorted the market and have likely already pocketed a couple of trillions from price collapses. Let's end with that, Sanjeev. Not that you know exactly, but your sense on that.
I mean, I think it's all of the above. I think Trump is incompetent as an economic manager. I think he likes conflict and headlines. I think there are a lot of people who are just happy to make money on any which way the chaos goes. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's true, but I don't think it's just some kind of conspiracy. It's just my opinion, but I think it's people trying to profit every which way off of every corrupt and crazy thing Trump does, including Trump himself, including he and his family.
Well, other than that, have a nice day.
Thanks, Cary. Thanks so much for having me.
I am so glad you've been on with us today, and I hope you'll come back again. We've been talking to Sanjeev Berry, foreign policy analyst and a human rights advocate. He's a man who agrees that the U.S. government should not be bankrolling Elon Musk's empire while Musk gleefully dismantles the very system that keeps his fortune afloat. We've been talking about a new campaign in which democracy should serve people instead of tech oligarchs lighting cigars with government contracts. You can learn more simply by going to freedomforward.org, freedomforward.org. Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files. When we continue on the other side, we're going to jump to a couple of college students who say that climate change is real. They're stuck here on this planet at least 70 more years. They have skin in the game like no one else, and they're going to give us the bottom line on what's real and what's not, and that's in just a sec.
This pussy grabs back. The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
You listen? Well, it's still legal.
The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Reminding you, we're also streaming right now live on YouTube. You can simply Google Cary Harrison YouTube and subscribe so we can stay connected when you show up at your destination. Simply switch over to the stream on your phone at the Cary Harrison YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at CaryHarrison.com. There you're going to get a transcript of the entire show, plus access to stuff we simply cannot, will not do on the radio. And that's our newsletter at CaryHarrison.com. Well, climate change, that mythical beast lurking somewhere between government conspiracy and inconvenient reality. I remember interviewing Al Gore a bunch of years ago, several different times, and he said, no, really, it's coming. And here we are today. Wherever you live, boy, have you seen something you never saw before in your lifetime. But recently, we've been told it's real, then we've been told it's not. And now you're mostly told to shut up about it and let the adults handle it. Those very same adults who still think oil spills are just aggressive seafood seasoning. But let's be honest. You don't need a PhD in environmental science to know that breathing in wildfire smoke from 3 states away isn't exactly a sign of a thriving planet. And while half the country argues over whether rising sea levels are real, the other half is busy investing in waterfront property that'll soon come with complimentary snorkeling gear. The president recently spoke about the California fires and said the following, and I quote, "I invaded Los Angeles and we opened up the water, and the water is now flowing down. They have so much water, they don't know what to do. They were sending it out to the Pacific for environmental reasons." Okay, can you believe it? And in the meantime, they lost 25,000 houses. They lost, and nobody's ever seen anything like it. But we have the water. Love to show you a picture. You've seen the picture. The water's flowing through the half pipes, you know. We have the big half pipes that go down. Used to, 25 years ago, they used to have plenty of water, but they turned it off for environmental reasons. Well, I turned it on for environmental reasons and also fire reasons. I don't think anything like could happen this way, but they didn't have enough water. Now the farmers are going to have water for their land, and the water's there, but I actually had to break in. We broke in to do it because we had people who were afraid to give water. In particular, they were trying to protect a certain little fish. And I said, how could you protect a fish if you don't have water? They didn't have any water, so they're protecting a fish. And that didn't work out too well, by the way, end quote. I can't even translate that. It's like word salad extraordinaire. And that is the compass of the truth right then and there. Luckily, we have 2 guests who refuse to let the world burn without at least putting up a fight. And they're college students with more backbone than all of Congress. Ashton Maddox and Adrian Reyes Alzate are senior students at the University of South Florida, where they've been knee-deep in the battle for climate justice, policy reform, and believe it or not, actual solutions. They don't just sit around shaking their fists at the sky. They're organizing, they're lobbying, they're drafting plans to ensure that Florida and beyond don't end up as Atlantis 2.0. How many Category 4 and 5 hurricanes in a single year does it take to make you scratch your head? Or the Gulf of America heating up to 101 degrees Fahrenheit? You have to pardon me for being cheeky, but it's way better than having me sob about the big hairy climate mastodon lurking in the middle of the room. Ashton's been working with the Clio Institute, an environmental nonprofit pushing for community-driven solutions to our self-inflicted ecological collapse, while Adrian's also with the Clio Institute, has been using geographic information systems to map out just how bad things are, because nothing says we're doomed like a well-labeled, data-driven disaster forecast. These are the guys behind Tampa Bay's Climate Action and Equity Plan, which is a game-changing template that can be used nationwide. And now, because we live in an era where critical thinking is considered optional, let's enjoy a reality check amidst the slosh of propaganda and salesmanship. Ashton Maddox and Adrian Reyes Alzate, I want to welcome you to the show.
Hi, Cary. Thank you.
Hi, Cary. Thank you for having us.
I am glad to have you guys here. Let's just start with climate change is a hoax, right? The government said so. Then they said it wasn't. Then they said it was again. Who's lying this week?
I'm going to go ahead and disagree. Cary. Over 97% of climate scientists agree that climate change is real, and there's an unfortunate vocal minority that is convincing our leadership otherwise.
And what's the payoff for them to do that? It's not like you're a lawyer with a $10 million. Let's just call you a congressman. A lawyer with $10 million, completely ignorant, don't believe in gravity. Not possible. So what's the payoff, do you think?
Well, regulating polluters means you have to stand up to polluters. And when you don't have the incentives to stand up to polluters, then you're not going to do that, Cary. Unfortunately, the leaders of our government are not acting in a way in the interest of us, the young people, and then all people that live here. We look at the California fires, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that more later. And President Trump had his way of talking about it. But it is a real issue that is affecting all residents around the world, but here in the United States as well. And when the leaders are deciding to ignore this and just go along with what their big oil donators are telling them to, then that's the direction that they're going to go.
Maybe you guys could tell us a little bit more about the Clio Institute, first what the letters stand for, and then how the Clio Institute is making an impact.
Of course, the Clio Institute. So Clio itself actually stands for Climate Leadership Engagement Opportunities. And so we work as part of Gen Clio, as part of its youth branch. And we are really just trying to make a difference by educating the youth, advocating for environmental policy just on college campuses throughout Florida.
So you guys are involved in something. How old are you, if I may ask? This just helps, people that are like 85 appreciate that somebody is doing what they may have decided they're not going to do anymore. And that seems also to be the problem. You guys are in your 20s?
We are still 20, exactly.
20 years old.
Awesome. So you're going to be stuck on this spinning orb for another 70 years plus. Who knows? Maybe genetic engineering will let you live to 1,000, but maybe you don't want to. Not if the weather sucks every possible day. So you've got real skin in the game. What is it that we can do? We regular people ourselves, if we can't rely on the government yet.
Well, community members can participate in local environmental initiatives. Here in Tampa Bay, we have the Hillsborough Affordable Energy Coalition. I'm sure there are similar organizations wherever your listeners are. And there are things that people do in their daily life as well.
I would say the number one thing is just to educate yourself and see, how can I make a difference? Just you being you, going about your regular day. So whether that means educating yourself about local organizations and how you can maybe volunteer once a week, or whether that's donating a little bit of money, just seeing where you can help out.
Ashton Maddox and Adrian Reyes Alzate, grassroots organizing. It sounds great, but how do you cut through the noise of corporate greenwashing and political apathy? How do you get people off their skateboards or Netflix and into action? You guys have done it actually successfully. I want to know the trick.
Well, we stand in front of those skateboards, Cary. We wave them down. It really is quite difficult to get students away from their day-to-day routine or just their apathy and move it towards action. But I do genuinely believe that most people believe that climate change is real. And if we could just turn that belief of an actual issue into a belief of urgency, then that is how we can get some action done. And that's what we've been able to do on campus.
and here in California, the recent California fires, it wasn't make believe, it wasn't fake news. And, you know, we've spent a whole lot of time raising money to try to help thousands of people and then their neighbors, and they've lost jobs. And I mean, it's ridiculous, the domino effect. And you guys are aware of all of this. What can we do? Not that you have the answer, but you guys have been on the path to getting the needle moved. The victims get it. The perpetrators, or let's say the collaborators, also get it, but they're playing the game for financial gain. And as we heard earlier, if you disrupt that gain somehow, it can change things. Is there a plan to do that with you and 80 million other 20-year-olds?
There is. We want to disrupt the local political process as much as we can. We want to make a difference, and whether that's actually legislation or whether that's electing the right people as our political leaders. Adrian and I, we were just helping to draft the Hillsborough County Affordable Energy and Climate Plan, and so we're trying to get that initiated as a county-wide thing. So we're really hopeful for the future.
You're also up against something that the rest of us are not aware of. And at the university level, you actually have free speech until 5 p.m. At 5:01, it becomes, I know, people are going, what? Oh, come on, seriously. But free speech until 5 p.m., and you're supposed to be in a free speech zone. So first tell me, where is the free speech zone located so that you can go there?
Yeah, you're so right, Cary. I don't know if our leadership at the USF knows this, but the Constitution doesn't necessarily limit where it works on campus. But the free speech zone is a very inconvenient patch of grass in the middle of campus. That is where we're allowed to be demonstrating until 5 p.m., that is. And this is not just USF that's doing this. This has been seen around college campuses around the country that have put in these rules to limit our free speech.
Was there ever a time when this didn't exist so that you see this is like really not good, or has it always been that way and you've just dealt with it?
So these rules were put in place in response to the protests that were happening in October of last year, I believe. And they were meant to prevent demonstrations from, quote unquote, getting out of hand. But in reality, it was just disrupting, as protests do.
So, I mean, I'm still just spinning at the thought of free speech after 5 p.m. We have a federal government that will implement that at some point, find a way to do that. And they've certainly found other ways around that. But you guys are eyewitnesses to what that really means. So I'm guessing at 5:01 p.m., the sheriff could theoretically come in and just have you removed and probably punish you for exercising your First Amendment, which is against the law. Again, this is a collision of ideas that I can't sort out.
Yeah,
So
that is. Sorry, go ahead.
So obviously this is scary for us. No one told me this was a 9 to 5 free speech area upon going to college and applying. But I think this was most felt during the election season, just last year, end of 2024. We were out there trying to get people registered to vote, trying to help people be informed and everything. But there was voter suppression, and what we saw with this lack of free speech after 5. And so, you know, people didn't know where to go vote on campus. People didn't know where the room was. We were 150 feet away as required by law, but people actually had to go much further than that just to go to the room that was up multiple flights of stairs.
We're talking right now to Adrian Reyes-Alzate, a senior at the University of South Florida, specializing in geographic information systems, also a regional organizer with the Clio Institute. He's been in the trenches, mobilizing communities, pushing policymakers, and shaping climate action plans with the kind of precision usually reserved for satellite imagery. We also have Ashton Maddox, another senior at the University of South Florida, studying environmental science and policy, pushing real community-driven solutions. Both are fiery Gen Zers. You guys are Gen Zers, or am I wrong?
No, you're
100%.
right.
Good for me. I got one thing right today. And they're looking to bridge the ever-widening gap between science and policy before we all end up cooking like a bad waffle on an angry griddle. If we do nothing, if we continue in this trajectory, what does it look like even 5 years from now?
More extreme storms, Cary. That's number one here in Florida. As I'm sure your listeners are aware, we got slammed twice in a row, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And it's just going to be more of that. We know that storms rapidly intensify when the waters are heated up, and boy, are they heating up. And not just are they heating up, but the sea levels are rising. I'm not sure what it's going to take. I'm not sure how much flooding it's going to take for our leaders to take action, but that's what we're here for, to point that out and ask them to please, please, please take action.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, you're going to see images of these gigantic hurricanes, something out of the movie 2012 that I remember from a bunch of years ago, a Hollywood movie of, here's our fantasy of worst case scenario. Here it is. Double category 4 and 5 hurricanes hitting the same spot, wildfires absolutely collapsing the media capital of Earth, Los Angeles, where it just should not happen. You can go to the Cary Harrison YouTube channel. You're going to see video of our two guests and what it looks like to be alive and sentient during difficult times. You guys are dealing with purposeful limits on your ability to organize and reach out to others. You've got between 9 to 5 as if it's a corporate job. Okay, folks, grab your lunchbox, go home now. Thank you so much. But at 3 a.m, this stuff is still happening. Let's talk a little bit about the wildfires in California. That just wasn't a spontaneous oops. That's Mother Nature, drought, thirsty, and all other things going on at the same time, something that we have never seen in previous human history in Los Angeles.
So true. And I would say that as the planet warms up, like we talked about earlier, that our precipitation patterns are just going to change. And what that resulted in was less rainfall for the LA area. And as you saw, just one spark just lit the forest around there just on fire. And so it's a tragedy that this is what it caused, but this was something that we could have mitigated for future events.
Both of you here, that would include me, but you two, you actually understand what causes climate change. There are going to be people listening that are 4 times your age or 3 times your age that still don't get it. They just don't get it. They've been told now officially by the richest man in the world and his companion to buy a Tesla because of climate change, but there is no climate change. And then if you don't think about that, it makes great sense. But what is the thing that's causing the planet to heat up?
So when we're emitting greenhouse gases, whether you're driving your car or having a plastics factory, it goes up into the atmosphere and prevents heat from escaping the Earth. It's kind of like a warm blanket around the Earth. And that is the global warming right there. And we continue to see that happening. And that is why we go after polluters mainly, because these are the ways that we could stop climate change from continuing to happen.
All right, well, we're going to get into this in just a second. I'm going to ask you guys to pause. As we pause, on the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about climate change, what you can do, how real it really is, and what you can expect if we don't push our leadership, whatever's left of it, to do the right thing. I know we've got other things that are just so massive that this seems like it should just take a back seat. But it turns out it's the front seat. If you really look at everything, it's right up there going neck and neck. And we're going to learn out why in just a second here on the Cary Harrison Files.
Smells like fish. Tastes like chocolate.
It's the Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
Well, it's still legal.
The Cary Harrison Files. CaryHarrison.com.
And it is the Cary Harrison Files. Next week, we're also going to be live streaming on Substack, where we'll be joining folks like Tom Hartman and others. And you'll be able to see there right on your app. So you can also get our free newsletter at CaryHarrison.com, and that'll give you access to Substack. Want to make sure you're all there in case things drop out and you're driving and you show up at your destination. You can always switch over and watch the video, which is exactly the way to go. We're talking right now to Adrian Reyes-Alzate, a senior at the University of South Florida, specializing in geographic information systems. It sounds very dry, doesn't it? But he's very smart. And I am not like that. So I need him to specialize in geographic information systems so people like me can understand and share that with you. He's also a regional organizer with the Clio Institute. Both of them, the other them is Ashton Maddox, another senior at the University of South Florida, who's studying environmental science and policy, still legal before 5 p.m., and he pushes real community-driven solutions. Both are fiery Gen Zers, and they are, because you and I are sitting on our lofty petards, our large curd cottage cheese buttocks, they're bridging the ever-widening gap between science and policy. I'm just way out of control today, aren't I? But without you, really, there is no us. Like, we've been telling you, just leave it to the old white people. We're going to fix it for you. Somehow, you have lost confidence in that.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Could it be that our government has indicated that it's not a priority? Could it be that we have unfortunately gone backwards in terms of climate action on the federal level? Or could it be that we're still struggling with extreme weather events, as I talked about before, Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, the fires in California? These are tangible effects of climate change that are affecting our everyday lives. And you were right at the beginning of the interview, Cary. We have 70 more years here, 70 more years of hurricanes and fires that we would hope that are not going to be as bad as we've seen in the last year.
Well, and they're likely, if nothing is done, to increase to the point where it's not livable anymore. We look at Europe. They are not pretending climate change is not real. In fact, Germany has 80% solarized at this point. And they're not known as a sunny tropical climate, let's face it. But they're mitigating the issues. Windmills, there's windmills in the middle of Italy. If you fly over Calabria, which is sort of the belly button of Italy, you will see windmills that go from one side of this peninsula-ish of Italy all the way to the other. Now, the mafia owns them, but that's okay because the EU has mandated the windmills, and nobody wants the windmills in their backyard. That's another problem that you guys could talk about. But the mafia is like, we'll handle the windmill problem. We'll just put them all in one line right across the belly button of Italy. But there they are. And so somehow it worked around. Even the mafia believes in climate change. So how is it that of the 280 million of us in America, I would like to think 75% know it's real, in fact, have been touched and affected by it. What do we do to touch them? How do we spark their interest?
I would hope 75% is true, but how we spark their interest is how we relate to them on an everyday scale. I mean, we can talk about the economy and how long-term it is very viable, it is very efficient to go to renewable energy sources. We can clean up our air, make it more breathable, more healthy for all of the residents in local areas. And by switching to a renewable economy, we really can help to alleviate the burden that we're going to face in the future.
So switching to a renewable economy, we all know intuitively that's a great idea. We're being told, oh, it's not profitable. Oh, we could never do it. Somehow we could never do that here. Could we do that here? And would it be profitable?
Of course we can do it here. And I'm rolling my eyes just hearing that, Cary, because affordable energy is becoming cheaper energy. And it's such a no-brainer, as you said, that if Germany can electrify to 80% with solar, that in a sunshine state like ours, that we can invest more in solar. Or in your listeners in California, in a sunny place like over there, that they can invest more in solar. Because it makes sense. It just makes sense. And it's unfortunate that it's been spun and politicized in such a way that now it's taboo to talk about.
So here we are at the crossroads. We're also at the crossroads of about 2 more minutes of the show, but I would love you guys to offer your recipe for what would you like to see everybody do, and what policies would you like to see happen so that we can at least envision it and somehow support it.
Yeah, so you pay now or you pay later. That's kind of at the heart of what we've been talking about. We want people to be investing in climate resiliency programs and different infrastructure investments as well that are going to allow us to have a long-term sustainable future. And Ashton could talk more on that.
Yeah, whether it's joining an organization like the Clio Institute that we are a part of, whether it's our coalition partners like Sierra Club and Food and Water Watch, just joining these organizations that will initiate change matters so much. And like we said, last week, we had 350 students go to the Florida Capitol. And we had the largest youth group ever go to the Florida Capitol and advocate for climate policy. And so doing things like this really makes a difference.
And those students are able to go there through education. They're mobilized by us because we educate them. And Ashton said this earlier, but you have to educate yourself. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of disinformation out there. And it's just about knowing what matters to you and how climate change is going to affect you.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I'm just so wildly enthused by how articulate and brilliant you are, and that you care, which means, well, it's up to you. And aren't you lucky that it's all up to you? But now that we know about it, it's up to us too. So you did good today, and we're going to have you back on again and again. We've been talking to Adrian Reyes Alzate, senior at the University of South Florida, specializing in geographic information systems, regional organizer with the Clio Institute, been in the trenches, mobilizing communities, pushing policymakers, shaping climate action plans with the kind of precision usually reserved for satellite imagery. Also, Ashton Maddox, another senior at University of South Florida, studying environmental science and policy, pushing real community-driven solutions, fiery Gen Zers looking to bridge the gap before we end up cooking, as I said, like a bad waffle on a hot griddle. I will call you at 5:01 and scream and see what happens. Fair enough?
Just don't get us in trouble.
Thank you so much,
get you in
Cary.
trouble, I promise. Thank you guys for coming on today. Cary Harrison with you. This is the Cary Harrison Files, CaryHarrison.com. Look forward to seeing you next week.
This pussy grabs back.